What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over some tips to hopefully help you get better and win more close range fights in Fortnite Chapter 7. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like some more, comment down below which shotgun is your favorite this season, and if you guys would like to use my code in the item shop when getting anything, it is Evolve Jake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So in Fortnite, close range fights have always been super important, but these are also typically the most volatile fights. So like the iron pump shotgun this season can deal a lot of damage in a single shot. And the twin hammer shotguns also have really solid damage with a pretty solid fire rate as well. So like things can go bad very quickly for you in these fights, but they can also go bad very quickly for the enemy if you play well. Because of how dangerous these fights are, you want to end them as fast as possible. You don't want to be giving your opponent several opportunities to shoot their shotgun at you, or, you know, lots of time with the twin hammer shotgun. You want the fight to end really quick. And the easiest way to make that happen is to get opening damage and then push somebody with mobility. So you'll get opening damage with something like the Deadeye AR, hopefully get like 100, 150 damage, and then push them with mobility, quickly clean up the fight using your shotgun, and then go on to the next fight. This has been the standard pretty much ever since Zero Build was added. You get your mid-range tags, you push, you get the kill, rinse and repeat every single engagement pretty much when possible. There will be situations where, you know, you're full health and an opponent is full health, and then y'all just happen to have a close range fight for whatever reason, but you don't want that to be the norm. You want to go into these fights with an advantage as much as you can. That way you can end the fight quick, give the opponent less opportunity to fight back, and then you also already have pressure on your side, which is something we'll kind of get to later on in the video. One super important thing with shotguns is going to be that you need to be comfortable hip firing. The biggest mistake I see a lot of like newer players make that really holds them back in close range fights is they feel like they need to aim in with their weapons in close range like constantly to hit shots, and you need to find a sensitivity where you are comfortable hip firing and like tracking enemies in close range with, because when you aim in, this slows down your movement and it'll make you really stiff as far as movement goes in the fight, and this will make you a very easy target. And movement is also a really important aspect that we'll get to later on in the video. But not only will you be like seriously impairing your own movement by aiming in all the time, but if your enemy does any sort of good movement, like if they jump, if they do like a sprint jump, if they do any sort of like sliding and strafing, any of that, it's going to be much harder for you to adjust to if you need to aim in, because aiming in lowers your sensitivity. And when you do this, you're probably going to be way too slow to track the enemy. So you want to be hip firing your shotgun as much as possible in these close range fights. And the key to that, I feel like, is just finding a sensitivity that you feel comfortable hip firing and tracking enemies with. There's times where you may want to aim in with your shotgun, like maybe if the enemy isn't aware of you yet, you're playing some sort of cover with like an enemy pushing into you and you kind of like ADS as you peek from cover, or just the range calls for it. But that shouldn't be the norm for close range fights. Those are exceptions, like not the rule. The rule is that you mostly hip fire. Using cover well is also going to be very important in these close range fights. The open fights where you and an opponent both have no cover and you're just kind of like jumping and sliding around and stuff, that will happen sometimes, but ideally you want to have some sort of cover as often as possible in these close range fights. Using cover just gives your opponent a smaller target to hit, and the smaller target your opponent has to hit, the harder it will be for them to fight you, and the less damage you're likely to take in the fight. The way the camera is in Fortnite, you expose less of your character if you're peeking from the right than if you're peeking from the left. So if you go from the right side, you don't have to show as much to actually be able to shoot. But if you peek from the left side of cover, you do. And in a lot of close range fights in this game, you'll be behind a rock or a tree or some small piece of cover where you could honestly peek from either side. And doing that, you want to peek from the right as much as possible. If you're getting chased from an enemy, you want to try to get to some sort of cover and set yourself up with a right shoulder peek. If you're pushing an enemy, there may be times where you just want to shockwave or katana right on their face, especially if you have them incredibly weak. But oftentimes you want to push to some sort of cover near them and then play the fight from that whenever possible. This is, again, one of those things that needs to be natural. You need to be naturally like capable of tracking opponents with your hipfire. You also need to naturally use cover in fights and navigate the map in such a way and navigate your fights in such a way where you're utilizing right shoulder peek as much as possible. Weapon swapping is also something you want to be very comfortable with, because the pump shotguns in Fortnite don't actually need to do their pump animation to shoot again. The only thing that matters is the time between shots. So in zero build especially, it's good to swap to some sort of spray weapon to fill that time between pump shots with some damage, or just outright eliminate the enemy with your spray. If you hit somebody like 180 with one of these pump shots, you could probably just swap to your AR and finish the fight that way. But if you hit like 60 or 70, swapping to your AR, getting another additional like 60 or 70 damage, swapping back to the shotgun, and then having that, you know, be seamless and fluid is going to make your fighting a lot cleaner, and it's going to make your damage outputs in fights a lot better. Like, you're going to be getting more damage in less time if you do this well. Another reason why you need to be comfortable with weapon swapping is swapping to your mobility to like chase somebody. Like, let's say you get damage on them, you go to shockwave on them, and then they shockwave away. You want to be able to quickly, you know, swap back to your shockwaves to continue to chase them if you do want to do that. Or on the flip side, as I kind of already talked about, most fights, you want the ideal situation of you getting opening damage and then pushing if it requires it, right? You're going to need to swap, you know, to your mobility, get that push, swap back to your shotgun when traveling to them. That way it's ready to go right away. Just being fluid with your weapon swapping is another thing that's just like one of those signs of somebody who's like decent at the game. And you can really tell when somebody is comfortable with this versus like not comfortable with it. And the people who aren't comfortable are more likely to mess up in those high pressure situations, more likely to just be a bit slower. And that's going to be the difference maker in some fights. Having consistent weapons in the same slot every game helps building this muscle memory. Like me, for example, I pretty much always put my shotgun slot 1 and my AR slot 2. That way they're next to each other with just a single button click. I do play on controller, so this is different for keyboard, and it's also different if you're using the quick weapon. But either way, having things in the same slot helps a lot. And then I typically put my shockwaves in slot 5, so they are also only one swap away from my shotgun. I can shockwave and then easily swap back to my shotgun, or I can swap from my shotgun to my shockwaves easily if I need to like chase an enemy. Movement is also super important in close range fights, as I said earlier. With cover, I kind of said that like you want to give your opponent the smallest target to hit. With movement, you want to give your opponent the most inconvenient target to hit. And the best case scenario in a lot of these fights, especially if it's more of one of those like open fights where cover isn't really involved, is you would be able to jump or slide behind an enemy. And this is called breaking their camera. And doing this well, and again, having it be something natural and fluid to you, is going to be something that tips the odds of your fights and in your favor. I do have, you know, videos about movement, and I'm sure I'll make more in the future that go more in depth, but that's just basically the core of it. You want to be as inconvenient as possible to hit. Think of what's hard for you to fight. Is it harder to fight an opponent that just stands there, or someone who's erratically jumping and sliding all over the place? Probably the movement players. Sometimes the people that just stand still are so awkward that it's like weird to fight them. But more often than not, being erratic with your movement and being annoying with your movement is going to make your opponent's life harder, and that will make your life easier. This is also why I said that you don't want to aim in with your shotgun as much, because you ruin your side-to-side strafing movement. And you can somewhat aim with your movement if you're a controller player. This is a good way to make small adjustments, like strafing left to right to make up for your aim a little bit is a habit you want to get in, you want to do well. I don't even know what I was trying to say, but you want to be able to do that well. In any game, any shooter I've ever played on controller, being able to aim in unison with both sticks is really important. But the core is just be annoying. Jump shot, slide shot, jump after shooting, slide after shooting, sprint and slide, just anything that will make you annoying to deal with, you want to do. Obviously, there is movement items in the game as well, and using those good is super important, but that kind of comes with time. Understanding shotguns is something that will also probably have a pretty large impact on helping you win close range fights. The way shotguns deal damage in this game is they shoot a spread of pellets, and then you get damage for every pellet you hit. And each pellet, if you hit it to the head, it will get the headshot multiplier. But it's not like your shot is either just a headshot or a body shot. Oftentimes, some pellets will hit the head and some pellets will hit the body. And this is why there's confusion about the damage you get on shotguns in this game, where people will be like, I hit 40 to the head. How did that happen? Probably because you only hit a few pellets and then the rest of your pellets just missed. And with shotguns that have a larger reticle, it's often better to aim for body shots rather than just going for the straight headshot. Like the twin hammer shotguns, for example, if you were to put the dot that's in the center of the reticle on like the opponent's forehead, most of your reticle is just on air, guaranteed to miss, right? And it's going to say you hit a headshot, but that's going to be a very minuscule headshot. putting the dot on like the upper chest area will give you some pellets to the head and some pellets to the body. And while it's not entirely headshots, it's probably better than missing a lot of pellets. Shotguns that have a tighter pellet spread, like the iron pump, for example, you can aim more for headshots, but based on the reticle size will kind of determine what you want to do. Oftentimes, it's just best to fill as much of your crosshair with the opponent as possible. That way you just hit as many pellets as possible. Another thing you want to really learn with these shotguns is the range they have, because shooting a shot at a bad range oftentimes kind of griefs your timing in a fight, especially if you were getting close to them. Like if you were shockwaving onto somebody, if you shoot too early with your shotgun, that's kind of just a wasted shot when you're about to be within range anyway. So really learning the range of these shotguns and knowing how to play off that, whether you're pushing somebody, having somebody push into you, jiggle peeking behind cover, all of that, learning the range of these shotguns is important. And then also the fire rates, same thing. I talked about with weapon swapping, how you want to shoot your pump and then swap to your spray and then swap back to the pump. If it is a fight where you're constantly exposed to the opponent, learning the fire rate of the pump so that like you get that perfect timing of swapping back to it as soon as it's ready to shoot oftentimes will be ideal, unless you have them so weak that just like 1 or 2 AR shots will do the trick. Like if you have them super weak, maybe just stick on the AR. But if you know they're not that weak, getting that final pump shot to finish the fight is often going to be faster than just sticking on the spray. So using the shotguns enough to be consistent with them and learning all these intricacies is very important. And in this video, I mainly went over things that I think are important when it comes to winning close range fights. But a lot of this just comes down to muscle memory and mechanical skill. Just watching these videos won't immediately make you better at those things. It comes like I wanted to make the video so that you're aware of it and you kind of know what you want to improve on, you know, your movement, you're using cover well, weapon swapping. These are the things you want to focus on. But just watching the video, you don't just suddenly do all those things well. It comes from time in game and getting used to fighting. And a lot of players get nervous or scared and like panic in fights. And I think this is even more extreme in close range fights. If you're like 80 meters away ARing each other, sure, you're in a fight, but it's not like do or die at that moment. Whereas like if you're in a close range shotgun fight, y'all are jumping around, y'all are using cover, it's more chaotic and I would assume more stressful. And that's why I talked about getting that opening damage not only gives you an HP advantage, but it gives you a pressure advantage as well. And a lot of players do kind of crumble under that pressure. And so getting that start to the fight is not only ideal from an HP perspective, but kind of just the momentum of the fight is already going in your favor. I think also being decisive really matters a lot when it comes to fighting, and that's why I touched on all these things. You need to have it be somewhat second nature if you do want to be good and consistently win these fights, because if you're having to stop and think about like, do I need to swap here? Do I need to like slide here? If you're thinking about those things too much, then it's going to be delayed. Even if it's just like a brief millisecond of reconsideration, it's probably bad. Being decisive, I think, is incredibly important. Oftentimes, more important than doing the right thing is just doing something. And because of all of that, I would highly recommend trying to get in fights if you do want to get better, and trying to get in close range fights. And once, you know, after the game is done, think about these things like, did I do good weapon swapping? Did I do good with movement? Did I do good with like utilization of cover? All of these things you want to think about and consider if you're doing well. That way you improve at them over time. And the only way you will get better at them is by forcing those situations and getting in those fights. Oftentimes it's going to be something where you take a few steps backwards, maybe play a little bit more reckless, get less wins in the short term to get better in the long run. That way you can actually win more consistently. And when I've made things like the spectating videos and I notice that someone isn't good at like close range fighting and I talk about it, I often get comments from people that are like, yeah, I don't ever try to get in close range fights. I just use my AR long range. And like you can get kills that way and you can get wins that way, but you're often not going to get the hard kills and you're not going to get the wins that like you probably shouldn't win, or like the games that are a bit hard probably aren't going to go your way, because being one dimensional like that can work, but you oftentimes need everything to like consistently win. And a lot of the times the fights that really matter in this game and determine the outcome of the game are going to be those close range fights. A good, decent player isn't just going to let you AR them across the map and die. They're going to use their movement items, they're going to use their cover items, they're going to reset that fight, they're going to live to fight again and continue to be a threat out there. So if you do want to consistently win in this game, highly recommend trying to get better at close range fights. And when it comes to that, I kind of just went over all of the things that I think are important that you need to think about and that you need to focus on, that you need to get better on if you do want to consistently win these fights. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.